about the boom, but do they mention the bust? The headlines scream luxury, but the numbers don't lie. It's time to look the market straight in the eye. Welcome to the Miami Condo Exchange, where we break down the price, the scope, and the range. With Peter Zalewski, the authority here, making the complex simple, making the murky clear. From the buy-side pressure to the sell-side heat, we're tracking every move on the concrete street. We got the data, the stats, the metrics you need. Beyond the flash and the glamour, we're planting the seed of truth. We analyze the trends, we map out the spread. Is it vintage charm or a money pit trap? We're looking at the analytics, closing the gap. Past performance, present shock, future prediction. Separating hard reality from the friction of fiction. No sugarcoating, no fluff, no disguise. Just the raw condo numbers right before your eyes. South Florida is shifting, the tides start to turn. If you don't know the math, you're gonna get burned. Yeah, this is the Miami Condo Exchange. Welcome to the Miami Condo Exchange, where we break down the price, the scope, and the range. With Peter Zalewski, keeping it real, digging deep in the dirt of every single deal. From the buy-side pressure to the sell-side heat, the only podcast you need on the Miami street. Hey. Real numbers, real talk. The hyperbole stops here. This is the Miami Condo Exchange, y'all.
Happy Tuesday, Miami. This is the Miami Condo Exchange. It is a conversation about what's going on in the condo market from a metrics, a trends, and analytical perspective. And you are in for something very special today. Why? Because South Florida condo prices, on average, are falling. They're finally falling. We've been predicting it. We've been talking about it. We've been getting a lot of people saying we don't know what the hell we're talking about. Now they're falling. First half of the 2025-2026 winter buying season, condo sale prices are down for overall condos as well as vintage condos. We saw it coming. Why do we see it coming? Part of it has to do with just simply being on the ground long enough. The other part of it has to do with the fact that we have the South Florida Condo Association Financial Cliff Index. It's a week-over-week analysis or index to track real-time what's going on in the condo market. We got the numbers. We're going to share it with you. And because you're watching live, remember, I do this every Tuesday, the Miami Condo Exchange, every Tuesday. I do it at 4 o'clock. I live stream it. And then after the fact, we go ahead. We do a little bit of editing, mostly for template and for appearance. And then we make it available on demand. If you want to watch it on demand, you got to be a member of the Miami Condo Investing Club. Website is miamicondo.club. If you watch it live, you get to see it all for free. So we're going to be sharing charts with you. We're going to be walking you through what's exactly going on, and we're going to be giving you some insight as to what to expect from the second half of the winter buying season. I'm Peter Zalewski. I'm a condo consultant. I'm an expert witness. I'm also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. Condo Investing Club is basically an opportunity and a way to create a community for those people who are interested in condos. Whether you're a buyer, DIY, or with a realtor, whether you're a seller, whether you're a real estate professional, maybe you're a lender, maybe you're a regulator, trying to get a sense of what's going on in the condo market, a condo market that is flooded with sell-side, let's call it marketing, some would say propaganda, talking about the market conditions, but we've been steering you clear away from all of the hyperbole and towards sort of what the real numbers are pointing, and now they're finally on the board. We've seen a pullback in the average price per unit and price per square foot on the vintage side. Vintage units are those that are 30 years or more. And on the overall market, we saw a price drop on the price per square foot. Overall, is all condos. Vintage are those that are 30 years or more. These are the ones that are under heightened scrutiny as a result of legislation put in place once the Surfside condo collapse occurred back in June of 2021, when nearly 100 people died. A $1 billion settlement was paid out to the families of the victims. The insurance industry lobbied the legislature. The legislature made a number of changes, and paramount and cornerstone of the changes are now inspections have to be done effectively every 10 years. So at year 10, you have to do something called the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. Year 20, you got to do something called the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. Year 30, you do this big one. It's called a milestone inspection. Really kind of roll up the sleeves, get in there. Year 40, you do another one. You also, in Miami-Dade County, you're doing something called a 40-year recertification, and so on and so on. So basically, every 10 years, you are getting a special assessment across the board. These special assessments, the association typically give you a year to pay. If you don't pay, association can move to foreclose on you. Some associations, because everybody's sort of scraping by, what they'll do is they'll go ahead and they'll take out a loan. Some of these loans on these condos for these special assessments and for the work that needs to be done to make sure that the building is safe. Some of the interest rates are north of 9%. Right now, mortgages are still north of 6%, even though the Federal Reserve has cut interest rates 3 times since September. So we got a whole mixed up market going on. But one thing that we do know is supply is up, sales are down, and the transactions that are occurring, they're occurring because prices are getting cut. They're getting slashed by the sellers who want to get out overall, as well as on the vintage side. It's something the real estate industry said would never happen. It can happen. 1,000 people a day are moving to Florida. We are the gateway to Latin America. Prices never go down. They only go up and up and up. And you got the FOMO, the fear of missing out. You better rush it now. You better buy, because if you don't buy, you're never going to have another chance. That's what they told you. Now, the data is showing something a little bit different, and we're going to be walking you through it. We're going to be talking about South Florida today. I am then going to get into other reports throughout the rest of the week. And let me give you a little hint. Greater downtown Miami, it's not doing very well. It is not doing very well this winter, year over year, compared to last winter. Again, first half of the winter buying season. So this would be November through January. And the entire winter buying season goes from November through April. Typically what happens is people come to town during this winter buying season. They're coming here for an event. They're coming here for a vacation. Maybe they're going on a cruise. While they're here, they start to reflect on everything, and they start to say, you know what? I kind of like it. Let me go ahead. Let me take a shot at maybe buying one of these condominiums. When I buy one of these condominiums, yeah, it could be good. I could use it for retirement, or maybe we'll move down here. The scenario is always the same, and it's always been the same since I've been here since 1993. What typically happens is by the time you find a unit, then you go through the process of the due diligence, you get your financing if you need it. By the time you close, it's effectively the summer. So then the winter is when you basically are shopping, and then the summer is typically when you're closing on your unit. And that summer we define as May through October. So typically the summer is going to be much more busier in terms of transactions. The winter is kind of when it gets going. There are some closings. They tend to be in December. January tends to be a little bit quiet, whatever the case may be. But what's happening, what's different this time, is that all of the costs associated with maintaining these condo associations, making sure that they're safe. Remember, state is requiring inspections to be done of all these buildings. So all of the inspections that had to be done, they should have been done by the end of 2024. So coming into 2025, we should have had all the studies done, but they didn't get them done. Associations did not get them done for a number of different reasons. Some of them just simply chose to not do the report. They just said, state's never going to do it. The other ones, they couldn't find the people to go ahead and process the reports because they have to be done by licensed architects and licensed engineers. There weren't enough people on the ground who were willing to step forward and do it. Why? Because they face liability. They face liability on the civil side as well as the criminal side related to these reports. And not a lot of licensed architects or engineers want to take on that responsibility. They simply didn't do it. Now, as we're in 2026, all of the reports should have been done. I haven't seen a report yet talking about what percentage have been done, but I would assume most of them have been done. And more importantly, 2026, you have to start funding everything that's laid out in these studies, Structural Integrity Reserve Study, or SIRS, every 10 years, milestone when you hit year 30. So they have to start to get funded. The money has to be allocated. It has to either be raised through a capital raise through reserves and or a loan needs to be taken out. And then the work's got to begin based on what the experts are saying. What that's doing is that it's skyrocketing the cost of living in some of these condos. A lot of times, it's cheaper to rent one of these condo units rather than actually own it. Special assessments are basically killing a lot of people. Let me give you an idea. We haven't seen any formal studies done yet, but our ballpark, based on talking to people who invest, who are involved with engineering, restoration, all that stuff, we're ballparking when a building gets up to that 30-year mark, you're probably looking, if it's up to 4 stories, probably about $25,000 per unit. If you're coming in between 5 and 14, assume it's going to be 65 grand, and then 15 stories or higher, $100,000, no questions asked. That is the burden that many of these condo owners are faced at the same time while their maintenance fees are going up. A report came out by First Service Residential. It's a very large property management company down here in South Florida. They came out and they said in Miami-Dade County, the average maintenance fee per square foot monthly is $1.15. Think about that. 1,000 square foot place. It's costing $1,150 a month in maintenance fees. If you're in Broward or Palm Beach County, coming in about $1.02 a square foot per month. Again, $1,000 a month. Now you throw in the property taxes. Property taxes are 2%. Effectively whatever the valuation is. Now, if you're a primary resident, you're somebody who lives in Florida and a resident, you get to claim something called a homestead exemption, which will simply lock you in at a certain valuation exposure. It'll increase based on inflation, but it'll lock you in and it'll also give you some discounts, but still 2%. You buy a condo, let's call it a $500,000 condo, and you got 2% property tax, of which a third's going to the county, a third's going to the school board, and a third's going to the city. You're looking at 10 G's. 10 G's divided by 12 months in a year. You know, what is that? $850, $800 a month. So you got 800 there. You throw in the maintenance fees. You're in for $2,000 before the mortgage even comes in. And then what happens? You go and you look at the rental numbers. The rental numbers are falling. They're pulling back. People no longer can work from home like we were all promised back in 2021. Why did Florida surge? We surged because A, you didn't have to wear a mask, and there were mandates around the country in certain states. We had to wear a mask if you went outside because of the pandemic. The other reason was you could work from home. So what happened? The tech bros, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, they all piled into South Florida. They bid up pricing. They took down units at an excessive rate. For instance, the summer of 2019, right before the pandemic hit in March of 2020, what was the average number of transactions? About 18,000 units in that summer period. How many occurred in 2021? 28,000. Where were we this past summer? 12,000. So sales have fallen off the cliff in terms of transactions, and now we're finally seeing signs that pricing is pulling back. Not dramatic yet, but typically that's what happens. You get a little crack sort of in the dam or the dike, and before you know it, the whole thing starts going. Why? Because people are fearful of what's called a doom loop. Doom loop is basically when a number of people sell, ultimately pricing gets recalibrated in that building and things get lowered. Next buyer coming in, they're saying, well, I need to get a discount too because I don't know where the bottom is. And then they go down again. Think the game Tetris. That's the way it works. So coming into this winter buying season, what we anticipated is that we would probably have those people who need to get out. They would probably look to cut bait, try to get out because of the rising cost of 2026 maintenance fees, special assessments, everything else. And then we said when you get to about the midway point of the winter, symbolically, it's going to be President's Day weekend. It'll be this year, February 16th. You got the Coconut Arts Festival and you got the Miami Beach International Boat Show. That is always the symbolic halfway point of the South Florida winter buying season. Calendar-wise, it's going to be February the 1st. And let's take a look at our calendar. Oh, it's February 3rd. We're getting right up to the halfway point, and we anticipated that when you get on the other side of President's Day weekend, when you got the Coconut Grove Arts Festival and the Miami Beach Boat Show, then you will see a pivot by sellers who need to get out. They realize their window to try to find a buyer is shrinking. Once May comes and it's hot, it's humid, there's hurricane warnings, and you don't have as many people coming to town. And as a result of that, if you're a seller who needs to get out, your buying pool has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. So the pressure is on right now. Sellers need to be sprinting to try to find a buyer to take them out. Got a little problem, though. One of the problems is we have a very aggressive immigration policy. And if you look at what's going on with sales, Miami Association of Realtors came out with a study. They said if you look at pre-construction condo buyers, 52% now are coming from abroad. Take a look at where they're coming from Latin America. Who's getting targeted right now by the immigration? It might kind of be people coming from Latin America or look as if they're coming from Latin America. And that is the rub. Who is going to take these people out in terms of those that want to sell when you have supply on the rise, you have sales falling, and you might have this group of would-be buyers, foreign buyers, who the Realtor Association said represent 52% of the pre-construction purchases. Who's going to fill in the gap? Chances are nobody. And if nobody's filling in the gap, how do you get out of a unit? You cut your prices. You cut your prices. You cut your prices. And that's how it all begins. Commercial real estate appraiser told me it takes 4 transactions in a building. Once you get the 4 on the board, throw 1 or 2 out, maybe for an outlier, and then you kind of work off of that. Everything gets recalibrated, and that's what we're in the process of doing. If you were not here during the great condo boom and bust of 2002 to 2011, let me give you a little bit of data. We've written about it. We have it all documented, and we lived it. We experienced it. What happened back then is you had this run up in transactions. Why? Well, one, you're coming out of the dot-com bust. Then it was followed by September 11th. Interest rates were 0. And you had a President George W. Bush. He wanted everybody owning a home. So because everybody was supposed to own a home, they made financing readily available. And what we did is we surged in transactions. We ultimately ended up peaking in terms of the number of transactions in and around 2026. 2027, we started the fall number of transactions. 2028, we bottomed in transactions. Want to know when price bottom? 2010. So typically prices fall. It's a lagging factor based on sales, because sales go bad first. Once sales go bad, those sellers who need to get out, then they start to come to that religious moment when they start to realize we might have a little bit of problem on our hands, even though their kids are on the honor roll, their kids are fantastic at soccer, their significant other is the best looking, the job is the best, their neighborhood is best. Well, then they kind of have that moment where they have to reflect and realize, maybe it's all just a charade. And that's basically what we're seeing right now. We're starting to see prices fall. Now, is this going to continue on? Who's to say? The Federal Reserve has cut interest rates 3 times since September. There's a lot of pressure by President Trump to try to get mortgage rates down so he can bolster the housing market. Housing represents a significant portion of this GDP of the economy here, and housing pretty much has been stuck. Why is it stuck? Stuff's too damn expensive. Affordability, go to the grocery store, maybe you're in a state where the electricity is extremely high because of all these data centers. There's a lot of pressure being applied to people. And don't forget, we have tariffs. According to Morgan Stanley, April 1st, United States, average tariff rate was 4%. Liberation Day, April the 2nd, average tariff rate, 17%. Now, supposedly some deals are getting signed, or maybe they are, maybe they're not. But if you walk into the grocery store, you see things are much more expensive today. The idea was to try to make it so expensive bringing product in. Therefore, stuff would be manufactured here. Who's to say if that's actually happening? Nobody really knows. But what I do know is consumer confidence is at a low that it hasn't been in decades. So that is our scenario. That is also why I would argue there's downward pressure on pricing for those sellers, cash-strapped sellers who basically need to get the hell out because they can't afford it and or they might be facing a foreclosure. Now, this is what we described in June of 2024 when we called for a condo association financial cliff in 2025. And how does the cliff work? Basically, you're in a building. And by the way, this cliff idea, we experienced it during the Great Recession. We saw it. We saw it during the Great Recession when you would go into a building, nobody was paying their maintenance fees. Those who were paying, they were getting burdened to have to pay even more. You would walk into a building and every other light bulb in the hallway, they would unscrew to try to save electricity. They turn off the cameras. They got rid of the valet, the pool, the common areas, all shut. Why? Trying to preserve capital, if you will, and reduce costs. That's what the cliff is. The cliff is you're like doing everything you can to stand on the edge and hoping you don't get taken over the edge with the entire association. And these are some of the challenges that we're facing right now in the Tri-County South Florida market. So before I get into and start showing you the data, let me throw out to everybody. I'm going to be having our February monthly meeting of the Miami Condo Investing Club. We're doing it next Wednesday. We always do it on the second Wednesday of the month. We do it at 12 o'clock noon, and it goes to about 1:15 or so. I give you an idea of where are we, where were we, and where are we going, projecting outward. It's always it's a fun event. I'm sharing with you some of the intel that I've collected over the years being down here. I was a reporter for 13 years. I then wrote a column for the Miami Herald, the Miami Real Deal, for an additional 5 years. I did it simultaneously for the Real Deal and the Herald. So I always had to sort of make sure I wasn't writing about the same piece. And anyways, I've been studying this market since the 1990s. And this is the monthly meeting is ultimately where I give people marching orders. I tell them sort of what to watch out for. If you're on the buy side, I've been telling you, start kicking the tires, start lowballing. If you're on the sell side, I've been telling you, be bold. Start to cut your pricing if you want to get the hell out, because if you don't, you might get caught up on one of these doom loops where a few people start selling and it's like one of those airplanes that's, kind of swirling down. That's what you ultimately got to be afraid of. So we've been right on a variety of different things, and we're gonna continue to keep being bold because we think we're going to be right. January of 2025, I called for a 40% price drop. Where are we right now? We're not close to it yet, but market's coming to me. I always said be ahead of the market. Market is coming to me now that we're starting to see prices. And this, I would argue, too, is why you were seeing many of these developers suddenly start to come out. They want to get publicity. They're coming on podcasts. They don't want to come on my podcast because they're afraid I'm going to ask them the questions they don't want to answer. But they're trying to put themselves out there to try to drum up some business. Nobody knows where to go to look for buyers, and they got these projects in midstream. Remember, developers are throwing everything against the wall this winter. They realize if they don't get enough sales, chances are they're going to shelve that project for quite some time while we kind of clean out and we recover from what was that great run of 2021 when you didn't have to wear a mask. You could work from home, and if you were in Miami Beach, they said, come on down and get on the cop car and twerk, twerk, twerk. No problem whatsoever. Obviously, being a little sarcastic. Times are different right now, completely different. But I'll be talking about all of that at our monthly meeting. It goes on next Wednesday. It's always second Wednesday of the month. It goes from 12 to 1:15 or so, like mentioned. And for what it's worth, too, the following week, we're going to be doing one of our meetups. We do a monthly meetup on the third Tuesday of every month. We do it from about 6 to 8. We have rotating locations. The membership is all over the Tri-County area as well as the world. So what we do to try to make it easier for people is we shift the location. This month, we're going to be doing it in greater downtown Miami. I'll be putting up a calendar invite for everybody. So if you want to come out, come on out. It's a cash bar, discounted pricing. Basically, you talk shop with other people who are condo oriented. So I want to throw that out to you. And remember, we do these podcasts every weekday at 4 o'clock. There's always a different focus, a different subject. But Tuesdays is always about data, metrics, and trends related to that. And then finally, if you are in the condo market, what I will tell you is don't look for a unit, look for a building. There's so many associations out there, so many different projects out there. For instance, state of Florida, 28,250 condo associations, 1.2 million with an M, 1.2 million units, Tri-County, South Florida wide. Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, you're looking at 13,000 associations with 610,000 units, according to a report that we did at the end of 2024. So a lot of condos. So what you need to do is you need to, let's look at it like a condo dating app. You want to swipe left because there's simply too much stuff. You don't want to waste your time on that. You want to find the ones that make sense. And how do you find the ones that make sense? You do your due diligence. How do you analyze a project? This is what we teach on Saturdays. Every Saturday, we do a walking tour or a bus tour. We do a tour. We take you out for about 3 hours. We take you into a market. We teach you all about the market. We give you a handout of all the condo associations there. We teach you how to look at buildings, how to analyze buildings, so you can go out there and do it on your own if you want. Or if you want to bring your realtor along. I have no problem. I have no problem with people complaining and pushing back and stuff like that. That's what makes a market. Market's all about transparency, and that's what we're trying to do, which is move away from what had been a market where the information is shielded. It's still today shielded. It's kept out of the public forum. Why? Condo associations don't want information out about their projects. Everybody buys a condo based on the comparable of a neighboring building. The neighboring building doesn't mean anything. The age could be dramatically different. The condition, the stability, the viability of these associations could be very different. That's why we're in the process of coming out with a condo rating agency where you're going to be able to figure out which buildings make sense and which buildings do not make sense. This is something that I first brought up to me back in 2009 by banks when we were playing their distress market. Banks couldn't figure out what the hell's going on with these condo associations. Fast forward to where we are today, you still can't. More information has become available, but not enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to rate these associations, not in the look, not in the architecture, but more so the feasibility of them.